Good evening. You joined us, and we're very, very thrilled to have you here. This is a special night, and it's special for the reasons that it's going to be a out of body experience. And by out of body, I mean you're here with me in Portland, Oregon, but we're going to do a little transposition. In other words, transpose you to a place in Washington. In Washington, D.C., we have a house. It's actually a mansion, huge, very imposing place. And it's built in 1818. It's been around ever since. It was built by a U.S. Navy officer for he and his wife to spend the last years of their life in tranquility. But did it work out that way? Well, you just stick around, you might find out. The place is Washington, D.C. Time, the present. In the present, it is a museum. It houses African American art. So, as you can imagine, it is steeped in culture in a very attractive place. A very attractive place for tourists. So, you have people going through the rooms, getting a tour, much like you are tonight. But the difference, I could only hope it'll be a difference from what we're doing now and what they do over there, is that the people during the tour, they're all of a sudden beset by such intense pain. The cramps are becoming so visceral, and the stabbing sensations, the shooting pains sends them heading right out the door, folks. Right out the door, so they could do the retching and the vomiting, and they don't have to at least do it in front of the other people in the tour. And they hope that once they get outside that those sensations will subside and they could just go back to the way they were before, calm, serene. But it's not the case. No, it's not the case. And even trips to the doctor, even x-rays, even blood tests won't quite tell them what is going on in their bodies. So let's go back 11 years before the house was built. Let's go to the year 1807, just to give you an idea of what might be behind these tragic and violent sensations. Why are people reacting so strongly just to a tour in an old home? In 1807, two very decorated officers. We have Commodore Barron, Commodore Decatur of the U.S. Navy. Yes, as you might be aware, Decatur is how Decatur House got its name. And he does handle himself very gallantly. But, and this is quite something, Commodore Barron has the misfortune of having on his watch a British ship called the HMS Leopard brutally attack his American USS Chesapeake. And the way he gets out of it is not at all acceptable. It's a very cowardly reaction by him. His leadership skills are oh so poor, and they leave a lot to be desired, and he just sort of falls asleep at the switch and surrenders the whole ship to the British. He loses the ship. So he goes back to his superiors, none too thrilled, and a court-martial ensues, which, as many of you know, I think is just, Navy terms for a trial. You have a jury, and the jury is a court-martial made up of his peers. So people who actually witnessed and had the first-hand view of what happened. Yes, that happened to be Commodore Decatur. He knew what happened. He knew it like the back of his hand. And he spoke out. He basically gave the story, gave it away, and everybody heard. And based on that, Commodore Barron was handled pretty severely. You know, he lost his station, he lost his command, he lost his ship. He was basically facing a suspension. And so for 5 bitter years, he stewed in his own juices. And he sort of had this over and over going through his mind, just over and over. What happened? Why am I in this situation? Why? And then he stopped to think, because of Commodore Decatur. Commodore Decatur did me in. And with that kind of attitude, he sought out the Commodore, and he said to the Commodore Decatur, it's now or never. We're having the duel, and it's to the end of one of our lives. So he was pulling no punches, and the duel did take place, and it was Commodore Decatur who took 2 bullets to his abdomen. And there he went, toppling over in pain, and the retching and the vomiting and the cramps and all those things associated with the visitors to Decatur House. Yes, indeed, he experienced those symptoms first. The stabbing pains and the shooting pains didn't go away for 2 whole days until he saw the end of his life, his long, illustrious life, where he expired and ended it on his own bed with those white sheets turned a bloody red hue. The color was a very, very deep and visceral red, and that caused his wife, his poor wife, to go into hysterics. She was inconsolable. And a few days after his death, people reported seeing a ghostly figure in the upstairs window of Decatur House, just standing there and distracting the passersby to the point where they had to board up the window. Yes, they boarded up the window to prevent the sightings. But folks, a few days later, people reported him walking out his back door of his home, holding 2 pistols in his hand. 2 pistols, and he looked like he was on a mission. And they think for sure he was going to meet Commodore Barron with 2 pistols in order to have another duel, to do it all over again, in hopes that by redoing it, that maybe this time he could prevail and he could go on with some kind of existence. But his existence is clearly sought. We see it and we feel his presence anytime we might visit Decatur House in Washington, D.C.